Well, now with big Democratic donors throwing money behind Vice President Kamala Harris, the question is she better positioned to win in November against former President Trump than Biden was, at least when you go by the most recent polling? We want to bring in Greg Valliere. He's AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist. Greg, it's great to talk to you. So here we are Monday morning with the latest development here. President Biden stepping aside in the 2024 presidential race. I'm curious just to get your reaction and how things stand, given the fact that it seems to be Vice President Harris is able to drum up at least a lot of support initially.
A dramatic change, obviously. A week ago, I was thinking, and most people were thinking, this could be a landslide for Donald Trump. And now here we are the next Monday with an election that looks much, much closer. I'm not going to predict that she can win. That would be a pretty radical prediction because they need to improve in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. But I do think that there's a better chance. I think she will surprise people. I think she'll be a very pleasant surprise.
Greg, what does she need to do? We've talked about that the key really to this election, really on both sides, is being able to win over that independent vote. It's something that our senior columnist Rick Newman was just discussing a few moments ago. So what does Vice President Harris, what does she need to do in order to better communicate with those key voters?
Well, she needs to get out on the road a lot, and she will. And she needs to pick a running mate. And I think that is probably still 3 or 4 weeks away before she picks, in my opinion, either Josh Shapiro or Mark Kelly. But I do think that she needs to get out on the road as much as possible and get the message out. And she needs to take it to Trump. I've talked to so many Democrats who say Trump needs to be put in his place. Trump's comments over the weekend were extraordinarily ungracious when Biden announced he was stepping down. Trump could have said, well, thank you for your service to the country. He goes, this is the worst president in the history of the United States. She needs to take it at this bully, and I think she will.
Greg, what do you think the chances are of Republicans continuing with the commentary that you just mentioned from former President Trump on the campaign trail, and that potentially leading to a rallying cry about Biden actually stepping aside from his current role as president to institute Kamala Harris? I know you mentioned this in your note, the idea that the cognitive issues are going to continue to be a line of commentary here.
I think this is a really big problem because you'd have to say one of the reasons he stepped down is that he had cognitive issues. He was frail. Well, that's understandable, but he's still president for another 5 or 6 months. So when Netanyahu comes to town today, is Biden going to be capable of dealing with him? I think that Republicans have a strong argument to make that if he is that frail and that ill, he shouldn't be president at all.
So, Greg, when we talk about where the party goes from here, lots of questions about whether or not Harris is going to be able to come to the middle, what her policies will exactly look like, whether it's going to look like anything like her 2020 presidential bid, or if it's going to look more like President Biden's administration over the last 4 years. If you can just give our viewers a better idea of how you see that ultimately playing out in the markets and what that means for this kind of unraveling maybe of the Trump trade that we have seen over the last week and a half.
Well, she'll be perceived as being on the left, although her track record as a prosecutor in San Francisco was a very mixed record. She was quite aggressive in marijuana convictions, for example. But now, yes, I think she needs to probably show that she's more of a centrist. I'm not sure she's quite there yet, but I think she'll be able to do that. But there'll be a lot of issues the markets will have to follow, including taxation. I thought a week or two ago with a Trump landslide, we'd get some big tax cuts. I think that scenario now is less likely.
I want to end by talking to you a little bit more about market reaction within these campaigns. A lot of talk about a September rate cut in the market, nearly pricing in a 100% chance of a September rate cut from the Federal Reserve. Could that be the final catalyst for the Harris campaign heading into November?
Well, it'll probably help her. I'm sure she wouldn't reject the idea of a cut or maybe even 2 between now and the holidays. I think she'll get it. I think the economy will look pretty good. But we've seen in the last few months, as you know, that even if the economy does look good, the public still feels the economy is mediocre at best.